Good evening. Here are the key global stories for today. United Nations braces for Trump's potential return to the White House. The United Nations, or UN, is preparing for potential disruptions to its operations amid growing concerns about the re-election of former President Donald Trump in the 2024 US elections. If Trump defeats Vice President Kamala Harris and returns for a second term, the global body expects to face significant challenges, particularly in terms of funding and international cooperation. During his first presidency, Trump proposed drastic cuts to US contributions to the UN, a move that would have reduced funding by a third, specifically targeting peacekeeping efforts and international organizations. While Congress largely resisted these proposals, the fear remains that Trump could attempt to enact similar policies if re-elected, potentially leading to even deeper budget cuts and a withdrawal from key agreements. Concerns are particularly focused on US commitments to climate change and human rights initiatives. Trump previously withdrew the US from the Paris Climate Agreement, UNESCO, and the UN Human Rights Council, moves that soured relations with global allies and institutions. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has warned that a potential second exit from the Paris Climate Accord would severely undermine global efforts to combat climate change, a crisis that requires strong international cooperation. There is also concern about the impact of potential US funding cuts on agencies like the UN Population Fund, or UNFPA, which supports family planning and maternal health in conflict zones like Afghanistan and Sudan. Despite the tensions, some diplomats are cautiously hopeful that Trump's administration might engage the UN on specific issues, even if it slashes funding in others. Oil prices edge up amid mixed market sentiment. In the oil markets, prices closed slightly higher on Thursday despite choppy trading conditions. Brent crude futures ended up 28 cents, or 0.4%, at $72.56 per barrel, while US West Texas Intermediate crude gained 27 cents, also up 0.4%, settling at $68.70. These modest gains followed a sharp drawdown in US fuel stocks, particularly gasoline, which fell by 4.4 million barrels last week, much larger than the 600,000 barrel build analysts had expected. Distillate stocks, including diesel and heating oil, also dropped by 1.4 million barrels. However, the overall market sentiment was tempered by rising US crude inventories, which increased by 2.1 million barrels last week, far exceeding expectations for a 750,000 barrel rise. The International Energy Agency, or IEA, weighed in on global oil supply, forecasting that production will exceed demand by 2025, even if OPEC Plus maintains its production cuts. The IEA also raised its global oil demand growth forecast for 2024, predicting an increase of 920,000 barrels per day, but noted that production growth from non-OPEC countries like the US is expected to outpace this demand. Thailand has made a landmark move by legalizing same-sex marriage, a move that is expected to significantly boost the country's tourism industry. Starting in January, the law will allow same-sex couples to legally marry, which could attract up to 4 million additional visitors annually, generating an estimated $2 billion in revenue. The development also holds substantial economic promise for Thailand. According to a study commissioned by travel platform Agoda, the legalization will create 152,000 full-time equivalent jobs and add approximately 0.3% to the nation's GDP. Thailand's growing status as a leading LGBTQ+ destination is expected to have ripple effects across the region, and advocates say this is a significant step toward greater inclusivity and acceptance for LGBTQ+ communities in Southeast Asia. In Brazil's westernmost state of Acre, a new highway project is reshaping the future of the nation's economy. A new bridge and access roads are being built to connect Brazil to Peru, part of a broader initiative to modernize infrastructure and improve trade routes to the Pacific Ocean and ultimately to China. This ambitious infrastructure project is designed to cut shipping times to Chinese ports by 10 to 12 days, significantly boosting Brazil's economic competitiveness. The new transport corridors, which include rail and road networks, are expected to add around $22 billion annually to Brazil's GDP. The project aligns with President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva's vision of strengthening ties with Asia and positioning Brazil as a key player in the global economy, with Beijing's support playing a central role. Brazil's strategic pivot toward the Asia-Pacific region comes amid shifting global trade dynamics, and the construction projects are expected to play a pivotal role in enhancing Brazil's connectivity with China. Lula's government is keen to leverage China's growing influence to drive economic growth and development, making this infrastructure transformation one of the key aspects of his administration's economic agenda. As President Lula seeks to deepen ties with China, Chinese President Xi Jinping is making his way through Latin America. Xi is scheduled to attend the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum in Peru this week, followed by the Group of 20 summit in Rio de Janeiro and a state visit to Brasilia. Xi's tour signals China's expanding influence in Latin America, where trade relations have intensified in recent years. For Brazil, strengthening its economic and trade relations with China is central to its strategy of diversifying trade routes and integrating more closely with the global economy. This visit is set to reinforce China's role as a key partner in Brazil's future growth, with Xi's support for infrastructure projects like the new roads and railways expected to be a significant highlight. That's all for now. Stay tuned for more updates on these and other global stories in our next broadcast.